Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, according to reports, including Pete Thamel at ESPN, who had it first, are reporting that Michigan and Jim Harbaugh are talking about a contract extension that would make Jim Harbaugh the highest paid coach in the history of the Big Ten at $11 million a year. He would be the second highest paid coach in college football, second only to Nick Saban in Alabama. I find this to be stunning. And maybe the most stunning part of it is Jim Harbaugh has not signed the extension because he wants to remove a clause from the contract that would prevent him from going to the NFL this year or next year. We are told that Jim Harbaugh, according to our sources, looks at the NFL as a parachute should he be suspended for the year by the NCAA. I think this is a shocking move by Michigan. Jake, are you surprised?
I'm not particularly surprised that this is Jim Harbaugh's stance. I mean, clearly the guy is in a place where, he knows that the NCAA is coming for him, and he knows, just like we all know, that punishment is going to be severe. And I think that Jim is someone who, wants to do whatever he wants to do and hope for the best when it comes to the circumstances of that, or the ramifications of that, the consequences, the discipline that's coming to him for what he did. And so, yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that he's trying to get the clause removed that prevents him from going to the NFL this year or next. That's not surprising. But what I do think is surprising is the idea that, Michigan wants to make him, one of the highest paid coaches in college football. And the reason that's surprising to me is because you're really making a statement. You're really sitting here saying that you believe he's one of the best head coaches in college football, when the reality of the situation is that he may have a pretty winning football club this year, but he's also been scandal ridden. He's also been one of the most in trouble coaches we've seen in recent times. And so as far as Michigan is concerned, I'm just not sure that it's worth it. I mean, isn't it only worth it if you win a national championship? And yes, I understand you're in the college football playoff and you're competing and everything's great, but ultimately the biggest thing here is that if you don't win a national championship, is he really worth all the trouble? And I don't think he particularly is. I look at other names and they've won natties. Even Dabo at this point has national championships. So that's why I say I'm just not quite sure from Michigan's side of this thing that this is 100% worth the reported $11 million per year that you want to sign him to.
Yeah, I think it is surprising. You look at these numbers. These numbers were updated November 1st. Nick Saban makes 11.4. Hell, Dabo Swinney, you'll remember, in October, defended his $10.9 million salary to fans who were questioning if he was overpaid. I mean, you're talking about paying Jim Harbaugh on the level of guys like Kirby Smart and Dabo Swinney, who've won national championships. Nick Saban, arguably the greatest coach in the history of college football. And this is a guy who's been caught red-handed, cheating, and he has been sitting at the top of a program that is facing multiple significant NCAA and FBI investigations. And it is stunning to me that Michigan, who I believe, and we've told you on this show, Michigan is well aware that Jim Harbaugh is likely facing a year-long suspension that will not just take place on game days next season. This is a thing where Michigan football is in real trouble with the NCAA, and you want to make the guy who is responsible for all of those violations the highest paid football coach in the history of the Big Ten. That is stunning to me for a guy who has not won a national championship, who has not won the way that you would think that Michigan, with one of the finest law schools in the country, ethically speaking, would want to win.
Sign stealer guy.
Like, it is shocking to me that Michigan just seems to ignore all of his transgressions. Like, and maybe I'm just sitting here from my tower of awesomeness. Like, am I making too much out of Jim Harbaugh's violations?
I don't think you're making too much out of the violations. I think what's hard to understand is why Michigan is so, just hot to trot to get this deal done. And I guess maybe that's not fair to say that, because you all remember like a month ago or 6 weeks ago, it was like, oh my God, they're going to sign him to this deal, and it's going to happen before the Big Ten discipline comes down and yada, yada, yada. And yet we've been on delay. So maybe they haven't been in as much of a rush, but I do think that the idea that the season's not even over yet and you're finalizing this thing is very interesting timing. I would have thought from Michigan's side of this thing, you'd have wanted this done much sooner than now. I mean, at this point, it's December 7th. And if Jim knows what the discipline is coming from the NCAA, he's already got his bag packed and his office packed up. I mean, if I'm Jim Harbaugh, that's where I'm at with it. So, I just think it's very interesting timing. And if you're Jim Harbaugh, I don't know that you're signing a deal that prevents you from going to the NFL. That to me is, I don't know why you would do that, especially knowing that the NFL very much turns a blind eye to any college indiscretion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you look at where Jim Harbaugh is, and I will remind you that Jim Harbaugh has admitted to level 1 and level 2 recruiting violations during the COVID dark period, for which he took a self-imposed 9-hour suspension the first 3 weeks of the season, because again, he suspended himself, and he was able to prepare the team during the week and just could not be with the team on game day, which is what Michigan did with him and the Big Ten did with him for the sign stealing scandal at Michigan, the final 3 regular season games of the year. You look at what he did there. He had negotiated a 4-week suspension with the NCAA, who broke all kinds of precedent and made public statements, the Committee on Infractions, saying, yeah, this is not good enough. We are not going to accept your 4-game suspension. We will handle this in the offseason. And by most people's accounts, Jim Harbaugh was looking at a half-season suspension in 2024. And then all of the revelations about, whatever went on with Matt Weiss, who is now currently being investigated, as is Michigan football, by the FBI. You have that computer fraud thing that encompasses multiple victims across state lines. And then, of course, the Connor Stallion sign stealing soap opera, the scandal, I think that's been the story of the year in college football. The 9-hour suspension that Jim Harbaugh drew because of that from the Big Ten. They went to court, as you'll remember, and then at the 11th hour decided to withdraw the request for a temporary restraining order so that he could coach the final 3 weeks of the year, because new evidence that was supposedly damning and overwhelming was presented by the NCAA to the Big Ten, who shared it with Michigan. I mean, this is a guy that, again, I think this is a really important point. Jim Harbaugh nor Michigan has ever denied that he did any of the things he is accused of. They've never denied it. Mm-hmm. They've never denied the COVID allegations. They've never denied overworking his coaches. They've never denied that his coaches were watching workouts on Zoom. They've never denied that there was a sign stealing operation in the football department this year. They've never denied any of this. And yet you want to hand him the richest contract in the history of the Big Ten. It is wild to me that Michigan, an institution of this esteem and respect nationally, with a law school that is damn near second to none, that has put out some of the best legal minds in the history of law in the United States, just is going to overlook all of these transgressions, all of these ethical violations, all of these NCAA violations, the dishonesty, the deception, the fraud that was being accused by the FBI against Michigan. Like, this is remarkable.
For what?
For a guy before sign stealing allegations who never beat Ohio State
and is never going to beat Alabama.
Just
want to point that out.
We'll find out. I think Michigan football is very good. I think they are very, very good.
Yeah, I disagree that they have any type of business playing this game with Alabama. I think that Michigan hasn't seen a quarterback as good. I don't think they've seen a defense as good. And furthermore, I don't think any team in the Big Ten has the mentality of the SEC. And I think that's the biggest difference is that Michigan has won many games, including Ohio State, by just simply wanting it more, being more physical, being the bigger team. And I don't think that you're going to have those advantages against an SEC team that's looking to come out. And if you think Nick Saban isn't very much aware of what's going on with your team this year, if you think that he's not, looking to prove a point and looking to be the guy that sent you home, looking to be the guy that's immune to sign stealer guy, yeah, I think Nick Saban wants to be that guy. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, I think Michigan's got a great shot. I think they'll compete. Obviously,
they're not getting blown out by Alabama.
No, but I think it's going to be very similar, if not a little worse than what Bama did to Georgia. We're really going to sit here and say that Michigan's a better team than Georgia is?
I think Michigan's on par. I think the biggest issue for Michigan is they don't score on the level of an Alabama. They don't. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to run the football the way they have this entire year against Alabama's defense, which is phenomenal. I think Free Harbaugh is not one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and playing at the top of his game. I don't know that he is going to be incredibly effective, or maybe they just play the way they played against Iowa. I have no idea, trying to control the clock, but I think it's going to be very difficult for Alabama or for Michigan to operate against Alabama. But I think all of that to say, I have a lot of respect for those kids on that football team. But I mean, you look at, there was this Buckeye blog that released this photo today of hand signal signs from the Ohio State game last year, where Michigan coaches had all the signals in their hands on laminated cards. Like, it's hard to overlook this. It is hard to overlook this. Now, did that matter in this year's game? It didn't matter at all. It did not matter at all. Whether they knew the signs or not, Michigan was a better football team than Ohio State.
Absolutely.
That doesn't, remove the idea that Michigan is responsible for the antics of its head football coach. And I have a lot of problems when we're talking about the University of Michigan. This is not just some fly-by-night truck driver school. It's the University of Michigan, one of the finest institutions in the country.
Which is why it's surprising they tried to defend themselves the way they did. The idea that, you would say that there's massive injustice and no due process. And then, you completely backed out of going to court. And just all this, just the antics of Michigan are really surprising to me. And it's what we were talking about yesterday with the Florida State fans angle or any of this stuff. Like, oh my God, we're victims, all this injustice, even though no rules are broken and there was no injustice. And I think that's what's troubling to me is that Michigan, like if you follow Michigan hockey or Michigan basketball, certainly, or any of their other sports inside their athletic department, they're outstanding. They're very good. They play with a lot of respect. Like they're doing it the right way. And so it's so surprising to me that we see a bit of a departure from Michigan when it comes to football, considering that you are a big school, considering that you're not in the place that several other schools in the landscape are, where you have to have the football money to be, to even survive. I mean, the football money is crucial to any athletic department, but Michigan's not going to, close its doors tomorrow if they have a 5-win season. You're still going to have all the ad money, the TV money. You're still going to be fine. So that's why I say it just surprises me that you're so committed to someone who, while yes, gets you Big Ten championships and, gets you some of those accolades, is not, in my opinion, making all the trouble worthwhile. That's what's always surprised me.
It's tough. It is very difficult. And I would love to get your thoughts in the comments section right here on the Monty Show, presented by our good friends at BuckedUp, BuckedUpEnergy.com. We do it every day at this time. We tell you, man, Bucked Up, it's what powers the show. I swung a golf club this morning 200 times. And I woke up this morning. I had a rough night of sleep last night. When you just wake up and you don't feel like you slept great? What did I do this morning? First thing, got out of bed, got dressed, went down to the kitchen, popped a buckshot that I had in my refrigerator, had one of the best driving range sessions I've had. We're getting ready to go down to Copper Rock in southern Utah this weekend to play some golf. Really working on my swing, and I give BuckedUp a lot of credit because I felt great. I feel great when I pop a buckshot. It powers us through the rest of the show. That's why every day at this time, 15 minutes into the show, hour number 1, we say, cheers to you, friends. This buckshot going down. And there it is. And it tastes good too. This is watermelon. I'm a huge fan of the Blue Raz. Get yourself 6 free buckshots. In the description of the show below, there's a link. They'll send 6 free buckshots right to your front door. I would remind you that BuckedUp has award-winning pre-workouts. You know, I work out 4 or 5 times a week every morning. Usually I get up at 5 a.m., head to the gym. The pre-workouts are the best. I'll tell you, there's 6-point creatine. If you're a creatine fan, it's all good. Get 20% off your entire order at BuckedUp.com. Use a promo code Monty. All right, let's see who's in today. First one in, Aaron Wilson gifting a membership to the Monty
Let's go,
Show.
Aaron.
Thank you. Appreciate that. As always, Hero 75 for $5. Michigan's leadership is hoping that when the NCAA punishment comes down, they can play the victim card to the fan base and say the NCAA is after Jim. But here's the point, and here's the question I have, and I'm certain that passionate Michigan fans who have commented on this show throughout this Jim Harbaugh thing, what is it that Jim Harbaugh has done that you're so enamored with? I need an answer to that question, because when I look at Jim as a Chicagoan, obviously, you know, I was a big Jim Harbaugh fan growing up. You know, he was good old number 4, like a great quarterback for us. You know, the bloody nose chin thing in Indianapolis. Like, this is a guy that had a sterling reputation. I don't think he has that anymore. This is a guy that's committed multiple level 1, level 2 violations in the eyes of the NCAA. This is a guy looking at probably a year-long suspension in 2024 by most people's opinions. This is a guy that's been caught red-handed in the biggest sign-stealing cheating scandal I think we've ever seen in college football. And they haven't denied it. So much so, and again, I point this out, and I don't mean to be redundant, the university bloviated and huffed and puffed about, hey, we're going to blow down the NCAA's house, and the Big Ten sucks, and there's violating a process. We're suing. So much so, you sued. You had Michigan judges, Michigan law alumni, as all of your judges. Like, you had a road paved to win your temporary restraining order, yet you halted the proceedings after the NCAA provided the Big Ten and you with overwhelming evidence to suggest what Michigan was involved in. What are you fighting for? Do you truly believe, as the University of Michigan, you can't find a more ethical, better, more capable football coach than Jim Harbaugh? Do you really believe that your 13-0 record this year stands on its own merits? Do you really believe your playoff appearance last year is above board and stands on its own achievement? You really believe that? Did you believe that with tattoos at Ohio State? Did you believe that with Perv and Liar at Ohio State? No, you didn't. And you and I know damn well all of your lies about, this was Ryan Day's brother's investigation firm were not true. So I'm asking you to be objective. What is it you're fighting for with Jim Harbaugh? The guy, you know, who for the last 3 years has tried to leave you for the NFL, but couldn't get a job offer. The guy who now you're offering him the largest contract in the history of the Big Ten, won't sign it because he wants to go back to the NFL. So I'm asking you, what are you hanging on to, Michigan fan? That's the one thing that to this day, I don't understand why Michigan fan is so boned over Jim Harbaugh. And I want to.
Stay hard.
But I don't get it.
And maybe it's that he went there. Maybe it's that, you know, you're enjoying the success and maybe And I don't,
Sure.
honestly, I'd almost be cool with it if Michigan fan or anybody associated with Michigan, including Jim, was like, yeah, we enjoy the us against the world mentality. We enjoy, running our program from that sort of viewpoint, that sort of vision and perspective. We enjoy that. So we're just gonna keep doing us. We're just gonna keep doing us. And if infer that, hey, if that includes sign stealer guy and cheating and breaking rules, and Jim takes the punishment for it, but doesn't really take the punishment for it, then so be it. I mean, if that's what it is at Michigan, that's fine. Just say that. I wish someone would just say, yep, you know what? The things that Jim is accused of or being disciplined for, or however you want to word that, right? Like, the things that Jim did are not so over the top that we would abandon him. Okay, fine. Just come out and say that, because then I can say, yeah, I pretty much disagree with that. And I'm shocked that you would put the prestige and respect of the Michigan nameplate and brand, through the ringer like that, because that's just not, that's not what I grew up knowing Michigan to be. And I'm not a Michigan fan, but I do have respect for the brand.
And again, as somebody who covered, and I want to make this very clear, I covered Jim Harbaugh at Stanford and with the 49ers. He's an excellent head coach for a small amount of time. And that small amount of time is passed at Michigan. This is no different than leaving Stanford. This is no different than bailing on the 49ers. Like, there is no difference here. And I cannot believe that Michigan fan believes you cannot. Are you really telling me you cannot do better than Jim Harbaugh? Man, I am shocked by that. If you are a Michigan fan. And donuts. Has Jim admitted to anything? He has not said two words. And I would note that even in their statements, Jim Harbaugh has not admitted to anything, but he has not denied it either. And Michigan has openly in documentation never denied it, nor have they ever stood on the it didn't happen, Jim didn't know. But never have they were strictly pointing at, the Big Ten has broken the rules and process. They never, ever, not one time said, we didn't do this. This is not true.
To the point where Tony Petitti's response to them was, hey, you guys have never denied it. You never denied it.
Straight up said to him,
like,
you guys have never denied this.
And so that's why I say, hey, it's cool. It's cool. Don't deny it. It's fine. But also, if you're not going to deny it, please don't waste our time and pretend like none of this stuff happened. I would even, honestly, for me personally, I'd even be more content with the idea that you would say, yeah, we did. We perpetrated one of the biggest sign stealing operations this game's ever seen. And we made a mistake here. This is where we got caught.
Yes.
Because if we hadn't made this mistake, we'd still be running sign stealer guy all over the country, and we'd still be dominating the top competition. And that's what I think is so interesting about sort of this story in the big picture. The Michigan Wolverines under Jim Harbaugh hadn't had a chance to play the SEC in the college football playoff yet. And now they're finally getting that opportunity. So if you lose this game against Nick Saban, and let's say it's, let's say it's 27-17, or like a very competitive game, but Alabama just controlled it and was the better team, whatever. You didn't get embarrassed. You competed, but they won the game. It leaves, for me anyway, a taste in my mouth where I'm like, yeah, once again, like, Jim doesn't win the big game. So what was the point of cheating?
But see, to me, it's not even that. We're not talking about the game anymore. We're not talking about the games. We're talking about Michigan stealing signs. We're talking about Connor Stallion's vacuum business.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a bunch of bullshit when we should be talking about football games. Because the thing that gets lost here, and this is what sucks, Michigan's a very good football team. That's the rub here, is that Michigan is really, really good. They're unquestionably the number one team in the country right now. Without nobody even bats an eye at that. Michigan football is really good. And we're talking about stealing signs. That's the problem. We're not talking about 13-0. We're not talking about dominating Ohio State for 3 years, because we don't know if that really happened. We don't know. And every time that a picture like this comes out,
sign stealer guy,
where a Michigan coach has the hand signals for Ohio State, on a laminated card in his hand with Connor Stallion standing right there in line with Jim Harbaugh. This is what we're talking about. And I think this is why Michigan fan is so arrogant and just so, so defiant, because you can't deny it anymore. You can't. It is no longer, I don't even think it's a question. Even the most passionate of Michigan fan can't quite literally sit here and say, no, we didn't do this.
Cheating, lying, and then playing the victim.
We didn't do that. Connor Stallions was a rogue agent. You can't, nobody believes that. Nobody believes that. And I point back to the fact that the NCAA rulebook says it doesn't matter who knew. It's the responsibility of a coach to be in control of his staff.
Yeah, I just would be more impressed if you guys would just own it and be like, yeah, we did this. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah,
we did this.
I think
we beat Ohio State without Jim. What are you going to do about it? That's what I would be. That's where I would be if I was Michigan fan. Let's stop running from it. The documentation's there. The pictures are there.
Yeah.
I would just say, okay, yeah, you got us. You got us. But by the way, we haven't lost yet. And even though you got us and we didn't have our head coach to a 9-hour suspension, we still won the game. So what do you have to say?
Yeah.
Why isn't Michigan fan taking that stance? At least then I can say, yeah, hey, you know what? You are flipping the bird to the world, but at least you're owning what you did. And you're saying we're not able to do it anymore and we still beat you.
Yeah.
Why are you not saying that?
Yeah, it's just very interesting. That's all. I think Jim Harbaugh's in a lot of trouble. I think he's going to miss a significant amount of the season next year. And it's just going to be really interesting to see how this contract thing works out. And again, if you're just tuning into the show, Michigan and Jim Harbaugh are working on the richest contract in the history of the Big Ten. And according to Pete Thamel at ESPN and many others, now Ross Dellinger, I think, as well, Mandel at the Athletic, they're saying that the holdup is Jim Harbaugh wants a provision of the contract removed that states he is not allowed to go to the NFL for the next 2 years. And if, in fact, if you're a Michigan fan, is that not just a kick in the nuts? You're giving the guy the second largest contract in the history of college football, the largest, the biggest contract in the history of the Big Ten. And he still wants to go to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be crushing if you're a Michigan fan. Brian Laguerre gives us $2 to say, honestly, no one cares anymore. Oh, I completely disagree. The tweets today, I think I absolutely think people care about Michigan in this sign stealing Jim. This Jim Harbaugh contract thing is shocking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. Why do you think it blew up today? It's only been around for 90 minutes, I guess now. Why do you think it blew up today? Because nobody cares? I disagree. Paulo, thank you for the $5, Paulo. FSU fan, what about when Notre Dame beat you in the regular season and you made it in the playoffs? Are we still on that? Are we really still on that?
Notre Dame, our mother.
Does anybody care?
No.
That's the one. With all due respect, Paulo, and I appreciate the $5. Thank you. You always tip us really well, and I thank you for that. That's the one where I'm like, yeah, I don't care about Florida State. I think that is such an open and shut case. I think the Oregon State story where just about every one of their football players is in the portal, that's a story that's worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, absolutely a story that's worth talking about. Ryan Day in the quarterback situation, story worth talking about. Florida State not getting screwed in the college football playoff. To me, I think it's asked and answered.
I just think it's tired. It's just very tired, and I think it's a very emotional topic. It's just so injected with pissed off people that I think people are a little tired of talking about it.
Yep. I think, what is the biggest story in college football right now? I think it is this super conference story.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys see the reaction from major universities, the collectives, people were really shocked about this. Ross Dellinger had a great piece at Yahoo today about it, where he talked to major college administrators I think commissioners across college football are pissed. None of them were told about it in advance. And major universities, Baylor's one of them, have questions about, hey, is this something we want? Is this something we want to take part in? Is this something we want to allocate money to? Apparently, the largest collectives in the country got together and had a call about it and said, hey, is this something we want to put our money into? And I think the loud and overwhelming answer was, yeah, I don't know either. Because I just think there's so much unknown here. And it feels like there was so little communication from Charlie Baker to the actual, people of power, which would be the collectives and the conference commissioners. And there was so little communication to those people about this. I think that's the biggest story in college football.
Absolutely. And I think that the panic that ensued with some of these collectives after that memo, proposal was set out, I think is really telling as to where people are kind of at on NIL and the portal and just the whole situation. Because again, if you have people who are worried about how much money they have liquid in their collective account, how what's the process going to look like? Like, just all these questions about like, hey, what, how is this really going to work? And what adjustments can we make? And because that's basically what Ross Dellinger's piece talked about is that, people weren't put off so much by the idea as much as the execution and as much as about how they could get qualified to do it, because a lot of people don't have, and this is what we were discussing yesterday. I mean, you got to understand, to get into this subdivision, you got to have 30 grand a player for at least half of the athletes in your athletic department.
$6 million a year. If you,
and that's on the small side.
At a minimum, if you have 400 athletes, you must pay 200 of them $30,000 each.
Like,
and that's in a small program. Think about that. That is a ton of cash. Cleveland Rocks gives us $100. Thank you, sir. Please donate this to the advocates to help those in needs. My wife and I truly appreciate you both for doing this fundraising. Always be kind and gracious on the way up the ladder of success because you never know whose help you might need on the way back down. Dude, you're not even kidding. You are not even kidding. And the advocates, our fine friends at the Advocates, theadvocates.com, the best injury attorneys in the business. We tell you every day, they're working with the road home to help those that are homeless, frankly. And the road home is one of the foremost homeless advocacy groups in the country. And they are trying to provide coats, jackets, gloves, hats, and blankets to those that are in the unsheltered community. You can donate directly to the advocates on Venmo. Advocates donations, and all of that money will go to the road home for the unsheltered community this winter. I just continue to say, if you drive down the streets in any major city and think about where our show it has its largest footprints. If you think about cities like Chicago, New York, Cleveland, Ohio, certainly Arizona, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston. You look at all of our friends here in Salt Lake City, we have a massive homeless problem. San Francisco, the 7th largest market in our listenership, San Francisco has a homeless I don't even know if, crisis that started during the pandemic and has only gotten worse. And you look at homelessness across this country, you guys, it's nothing to play with. If you have $1, $5, $1 million, we ask you, take 5 minutes and make a donation on Venmo, Advocates Donations on Venmo, and just say Road Home, homeless, Monty Show homeless, whatever you can find. We really appreciate it. Boyd Lake, our newest member of the Monty Show.
Let's go, baby. Sorry, I was, over here. Hey,
you were watching TV. Sorry to interrupt your prize
we haven't gotten the prize picks yet, but I was just checking in on the NBA in-season tournament with the ugly floors and stuff.
Yeah, Boyd Lake, welcome to members only content. Make sure you DM Jake on Instagram, SLC Jake. He'll put you in our members only Instagram group. You guys, for $10 a month, you can be in our Instagram group where we have a phenomenal group of dudes.
Yes.
So we appreciate Boyd Lake for joining.